And let's keep in mind that regardless of how this trial goes, there are still much bigger issues that we need to face, and we have a duty as a Congress, as a Senate, as a House of Representatives, as half of the House of Representatives, and as public servants to do better. Americans are watching C-SPAN right now. They're watching their news networks, whatever they're doing. And I promise you, they are disappointed in their government. That this type of behavior and this type of lawlessness is acceptable to begin with. That it was allowed to happen behind their backs. So with that said, I yield back. And if any senator would like to speak further
Aaron,
on the topic at hand.
if I may, just real quick, you should just. I mean, that was a great speech. You should just give the gist of that again, because I was gonna write in the Senate chamber, but I didn't have a chance to. The stream did sort of just it caught the last bit of your thing. You should just sort of. I think it's pertinent to the people who would be watching this stream afterwards to hear what you had to say. So maybe even just the gist.
Sure. After that, I'm going to read Senator Abdullah's speech because he's just sent me something. Mr. Chief Justice, you will be presiding over the trial, which will be in a few minutes. So I'm going to recognize myself for another 5 minutes. I'm going to give the gist of the speech. And again, I'm just trying to go over it off the top of my head because I didn't have anything written down. Right now, while we are about to start the trial of the President of the United States, and there are horrible things that happened in our federal government, the highest branches of democracy, there are still bigger things happening. And while this is important, and I will never not say that this is important, we have to keep in mind that there is a country far away from us that we attempted to defend that is now probably going to fall completely to authoritarian rule. And it is disappointing. It is not surprising. It's disgusting. And we can't stand for it. So regardless of how this trial goes out, whether it results in the president staying in office or if he is removed, no matter who is president, once this is all over, they have a duty to the American people, to this Congress and the people that elected us, and everyone watching around the world, to defend peace, to defend freedom, democracy, the values that we hold dear. Because we saw how quickly it fell in Ukraine. Like that. And it's chilling. And it's disappointing. And I hope that once this is all over, we will move forward as a country because we badly need it. So with that, that was pretty much the gist. I hope you got that dramatic wording. Senator Abdullah had a speech that he sent to me, and I will read it aloud. Nate was a good guy. I remember our debates on IRL if Glenn Youngkin would win and if Stacey Abrams. He was great, but I was shocked and horrified on the findings from the select committee. I will go into this hearing with the idea of impartiality and openness. We need transparency and ethics. I hope former Vice President Romney has successes in life IRL. I would also like to note, if you are a liar, corrupt, or cunning, we will come after you. Your day has come. Excuse me. We need trust in government. This trial is not an exception. If anyone thinks about doing any of those acts, time's up. Thank you. Okay. If any other senator would like to speak on this matter.
I seek recognition.
I'll go after him.
Mr. President, before we seek
yes,
recognition,
real quick. I did see your PM or your message, and I do think that is important. So we're gonna call. We didn't really do this because I was trying to rush into it so we could start. The clerk, Mr. Richards, is going to call the roll, so that way we can get attendance on record. So go right ahead.
Alrighty, I'll begin with the roll. Mr. Abdullah of Superior. I'll just count. I'll count him as present because he's in here. Don't think his mic is working. Mr. Brennan of Shoshone.
I'm present.
Mr. Cawthorn of New Columbia.
Are we moving to the trial? Sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Goldwater of Shoshone.
We are calling the roll to make sure everyone is accounted for.
Mr. Goldwater of Shoshone.
I'm here virtually. Currently, I'm in Cabo.
Mr. Jones of Superior.
Present.
Mr. Sanders of Cambridge.
Present.
Mr. Scott of New Columbia.
Present.
Mr. Sturgis of Cambridge. Mr. Sturgis absent. Mr. President, the clerk reads 7 out of 8 on the session as of 10:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Who was the one absent? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Michael Sturgis.
Okay. So with that said, I know Senator Jones wanted to speak on this matter, so I will recognize him for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be quite short. I want to use part of my time to have a prayer. I believe that, during this time of strife, during this time of, terribleness that's going on within our government, I believe that it is best that we all come to peace within our Lord, no matter whom we pray to. Lord Heavenly Father, as we pray today, as we pray for the sanctity and the preservation of our democracy, of the rule of law, and the checks and balances of all branches of government. We pray to continue on to show an example of what both the Constitution lays above, but to also show that no one is above the law. We pray this in your authority and in your name, the Almighty God. Amen. I yield my time.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Sanders, your 5 minutes.
Okay, I requested it.
Yeah, I just was gonna. Senator Goldwater did request it. He's in Cabo, so we don't want to.
Right there, so Senator
The
Goldwater.
connection is spotty. Okay, 1 second. I'm in transition to my computer.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Can I be heard? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we are all gathered here for a very bad occurrence, but a necessary one, I believe, in order to put a check on the executive government and show to the American people that the executive is not all powerful and that the Constitution still matters in American society today. As I speak to you all virtually here today, I'm saddened that I was not able to be in the Senate with you all due to a family emergency in Mexico. But I just want to inform my fellow senators about what's about to go down today in our chamber. This chamber is one of the most historic in American history and has housed hundreds of great people and some not so great people. I like to Sorry.
Keep going. Sorry.
I like to think of this chamber as a not necessarily a religious holy place, but as a holy place for the sanctity of government. And I like to reflect on the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he said, "Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country. We must deliver on what our constituents elected us to do. For many many of our constituents, they sent us back to the United States Senate with a mandate to get things done, but they also sent the president back to the White House with a mandate to get things done. So I want us to reflect on what this impeachment means. If a conviction goes through this Senate, it's evident that American democracy has no longer, or will no longer from this point forward, allow for, in my opinion, real justice. It is evident that the president has made multiple mistakes over this situation, and I believe in my heart that he is sorry for what he has done. I personally do not know how I'm going to vote on this conviction, which is why I believe it is pivotal that as a Senate and as a body and as a joint Congress, that we listen to each other. We listen to what we have to say. We listen to the defense team. We listen to the prosecution. We listen to what our mind is telling us, and that we do what we are here to do and uphold the Constitution, the law of the land. Senators are going to do what they think they need to do to represent their constituents. That is what I'm going to do, and I ask everyone else in this chamber to do the same. Do not think about yourself. Think about your party. Do not think about the president. Do not think about the vice president. Do not think about anyone. Think about the people that sent you to this legislature. Do what you think they would want you to do. How did they vote? What did they tell you when you asked them their opinions on social and economic matters? Do what is best for our country and what will allow for the Constitution to continue on for more centuries, decades, hopefully, sorry, I just said that wrong, years, decades, and centuries to come. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Senator Goldwater. Senator Sanders, your 5 minutes. Senator Sanders, there you are. Okay.
So I'd like to thank the American taxpayer for funding my education.
Also, just to be clear, senators will be given an opportunity to make brief statements during the impeachment trial itself, because, I doubt defense and prosecution will take up the entire time. So senators will be allotted remaining time to pass comment and judgment as the trial processes.
So while we're waiting for Senator Sanders, Senator Cawthorn sent his remarks, and I'm going to read them aloud. It shouldn't take too long. Also, really quick, when the time comes after first opening statements begin from both sides, when you make remarks, please keep in mind that you are supposed to be an impartial juror. And I realize this goes without saying, but please look at this methodically and be careful about what you say. Okay, with that said, these are remarks from Senator Cawthorn, my colleague from the great Commonwealth of New Columbia. He says, "The president was wrong, the president failed us, and the president needs to be held to account. I currently believe that the President of the United States illegally authorized the deployment of 150,000 U.S. armed forces in Ukraine. This is a subversion of our co-equal governing structure and a direct violation of the War Powers Act, and is subsequently a breach of trust between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Whether he knowingly did so or not is currently being investigated and is an important cornerstone of this Senate conviction. I am a freedom fighter, but tonight we stand here today with Taiwan and Ukraine under oppressive rule from authoritarians, a result of America's abdication. Which nation is next? This failed leadership needs to be called out. The president needs to make clear that the United States will no longer allow authoritarianism to reign free and spread about the world." Here, in the words of one of my idols, Tulsi Gabbard, quote, "Through my time in the military and my deployments, I have recognized the importance of having a commander-in-chief who will not only go after those who threaten the safety and security of the American people, but who will also exercise good judgment and foresight in stopping these failed interventionist wars of regime change that have cost our country so much in human lives, untold suffering, and trillions of dollars," end quote. This quote applies to why we are here today. Next, on conviction. This decision is not about whether you like or dislike the president, or agree with or oppose his policies, or approve or disapprove of his conduct in other circumstances. Rather, is it about whether the charges meet the very high constitutional standard of treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. I will heavily consider both arguments presented before the Senate in the trial. The quality of the testimony of both sides will determine which way I vote. I yield the rest of my time. So, if Senator Sanders is back, we will go to him.
I am.
Okay. Senator Sanders, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Scott. I think this is probably the largest audience in the gallery that the Senate has ever had in one of its sessions, and I'm sure this will go down as one of the most watched Senate sessions for sure. That's for a very important reason. The American public is engaged in this situation. They understand that despite the president's good intentions, and I think that everyone here would testify to those good intentions, no one is accusing the president of a conspiracy or ill will. And anyone who would do so would be wrong. What's going on here is that the president, knowingly or unknowingly, subverted what is the sacred co-equal branches of government and the process which keeps those branches co-equal. That process being, and I'm sure the prosecution can lay that out, but that process being quite simple. The president, if he wishes to take action such as authorizing 150,000 plus troops in Ukraine, has to consult with congressional leadership 12 hours prior to that decision being made. On top of that, and it is my belief as someone who's been in congressional leadership before in other communities, that is the most important aspect of this, the prior knowledge and advice and consent from the congressional leadership. But on top of that, the 60-day rule was also broken. In DES, 60 days equates to 2 days, 48 hours. And at this point, I got tripped. 48 hours. And at this point, it's been far past that. Where is the AUMF? I don't remember voting on it. Or a declaration of war. I do not remember voting on that. And as a result, tens of thousands of American soldiers are dead, and tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians are as well. And that's not to say that there wouldn't have been deaths in the situation in which Congress was consulted and something like this was approved. But that's to say that these deaths now represent the ultimate failure of the co-equal governance, the co-equal government structure that the United States has. That is a stain on our nation that we must deal with immediately. And if not dealt swiftly and immediately through this Senate trial, and I commend the House for doing this swiftly, then we will have a permanent stain on our nation of allowing 150,000 to 250,000 deaths in Ukraine as a result of the failure of our governance structure. And if we do not pursue accountability in whichever form the Senate deems necessary, then other presidents or other sycophants who seek that office, because everyone in this room knows that there are sycophants that seek that office, feel a little bit more validated in doing something even more evil with this precedent. And that's not some crazy conspiracy theory, folks. This happened. In Iraq, 2004. We saw Bush push the line, and accountability was not given from the Democrats. As a result, Barack Obama was able to push that line arguably farther than Bush in some cases, and for sure did not bring that line back in any case. Donald Trump pushing that line to an extent that we all saw on January 6th. We here in DES don't have 300 million people to govern, but we do have a community. And a similar thing could happen here.
Time.
Thank you. With that, we'll just finish up in this last sentence. A similar thing could happen here, Mr. President, if we don't pursue the right amount of accountability. I, too, will be impartial on this case. And if the president can provide solid evidence that he informed the president pro tempore and the Speaker of the House in the given amount of time of this action, then I will vote to acquit the president. Otherwise, sufficient evidence has been given to the fact that the president did not in fact inform either members of the legislative branch, therefore violating the War Powers Act. With that, Mr. President,
Thank you,
I yield
Senator
the floor.
Sanders. I have another quick sentence to read from Senator Abdullah. He says, Mr. President, I agree with Senator Goldwater. We need to vote for our constituents, and from what I've seen and heard from my fellow citizens is that they are upset, and I have been. The president violated the Wars Powers Act and violated key pieces of law. But I have heard a defense from some of my constituents who lean to the president. I will have to listen to both arguments to weigh my vote, and I assume you would yield back after that because I haven't gotten anything else. So, with that said, does anyone else want to speak before we officially begin the process of transferring the articles?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Bennett, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
today we all gather here on a very somber occasion. Very rarely has there been an impeachment trial of a sitting president in DES since President House, who was in a similar situation. That be it, Senator House willingly did it. No matter how you feel on these counts, whether you feel like they were rushed to the House, not specified or not, or if you concur with the members of the House, we must all come together as an impartial jury and determine whether or not there will be accountability to the president's actions in defending Ukraine. Personally, I do not believe that the actions of the president in Ukraine were necessarily the right moves. However, there are consequences to those actions. And I think it's important that we all listen to what everyone has to say and consider what is said. Mr. Chair, I yield my remainder of my time.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. Last call on speeches before we officially transfer the articles.
Mr. President, I'll make
Senator
this
Sanders.
quick.
Okay. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say, what our constituents asked us to do when we were elected to office was uphold the oath of the United States Constitution. That oath lays out very clearly that if a member of the United States government, not just the president, but the vice president or any other civil officer, commits treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors, that they must be prosecuted for the sanctity of our government. When this trial happens, I want everyone to put aside the personalities of the president, put aside the personalities of the president's lawyers, uh, the House's lawyers, and just look at the facts. Because when you do that, the evidence is quite clear. The president did not, whether the president knew about the War Powers Act or not is irrelevant. If he did not know about it, that, in my opinion, is a failure of intelligence on his part. He testified to vaguely knowing about it, and if he vaguely knew about it, then he should have researched it before pursuing it. Something called the War Powers Act seems pretty important. Whether or not he knew about it is irrelevant to whether or not he violated the law. In any other case in prosecution, whether or not the person knew about whether or not what they did was illegal does not matter. And it does not matter here. It doesn't matter who that person is or what position they hold. We have a law for a reason. It's not everyone's job to study that law, but it is our job as people elected to uphold it to do that job we were elected to do. That's what our constituents ask of us. The oath is quite clear. And if we do not prosecute those crimes
Robert,
given in those
for God's sakes, let's go.
if we don't
Talking in
prosecute those
circles, let's get on with it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a senator giving a speech, Ben. I mean, I don't understand. Like, I have 5 minutes. Like, I don't really understand like what you're doing
You
with
already
that.
gave one though.
Ben, like, how is that productive? Like, how is what you're doing there productive? So, like, I don't really understand like what you think.
You actually have
I was-
2 minutes left.
I was literally like just about to finish, and you had to like.
Okay, wrap it up, and then we're
No.
transferring the article.
It doesn't matter who the person is. It matters what they did, and we need to prosecute them based on that. That's what our constituents ask us to do. The oath is quite clear. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Let us formally begin the process of transferring the articles. I will now officially close this session, and I will no longer be presiding. That goes to the Chief Justice, Mr. Mulroney. However, I do have a short video of the process from real life that I'm going to send in the chat. It's like 9 seconds long, so that way we have something, because obviously we can't act it out. So this session is officially adjourned, and come back for the trial.
Thank the Lord.
I wasn't trying to be rude, Robert. I'm just saying, like.
Well, it was clearly rude because you interrupted a speech which I was giving, and I was like, for no reason. So like that. So you, it doesn't really matter what you were trying to do. It was like clearly rude. And like you didn't even really have to say anything about it. Like you could have just left it with that. I did not need an
Eyes are
apology.
watching, ears are listening, mouths are closed. Na, na, na. Okay, everyone shut up. Watch the video. The articles are coming in. Here comes Jamie Raskin. Okay, we can start.
Would not let him talk to me.
Okay.
Funny
what?
school.
I would like to thank everyone for coming. Just briefly at the outset, deliver some brief remarks. As Chief Justice, my job is to preside over the Senate in an impartial, fair, and deliberate manner that respects the time and arguments of both the defense and the prosecution, and I intend to do exactly that. I do not have any kind of vendetta on either side, and I will make sure that all sides are treated equally in both time allotment and in reference to their ability to make their arguments. Senators will also themselves from both parties and be treated equally in terms of time to be able to make their points and judgments as the trial commences. Furthermore, just to briefly add, in my absence, which I do believe will be unlikely, but in my absence, the duty of presiding over this session will fall to the most senior justice on the Supreme Court, that being Justice Bryant. So in any case, tonight we will move firstly to opening statements, and I believe that the House, the impeachment managers sent by the House of Representatives do have someone here, and so just before we begin, the Senate is provided up to 1 hour of arguments by the parties, equally divided on the question of whether or not articles of impeachment against Everett Terry, President of the United States, shall be adopted by the United States Senate. We'll begin with opening statements. The House impeachment managers may first begin their opening statement, the prosecution. Former Senator Sanders, I believe that you were named as an impeachment manager.
Tom PMs.
No. Hillary Sanders? No.
The House doesn't know what they're doing.
I was told by Mr. Williams that in the event that Miss Sanders goes MIA, which clearly she has, that Mr. Williams was designated as a backup.
All right, in that case, we will head to Mr. Williams. The recommended time for opening statements, just so we keep concise and keep fairness between both parties, is 3 to 5 minutes. However, an extension can be provided, of course, and there's no firm time, but if obviously it is taking too long, then we will, of course, intervene to make sure that time fairness is respected. So let's begin with the prosecution.
Mr. Williams. Fantastic.
Senor Williams.
Does anyone speak Spanish? It's a joke.
I
It's a
believe
joke.
it's
It's a joke.
Williams
It's a
the
joke.
congressman, not Williams the justice, but okay.
I would. Yeah, he speaks Spanish too.
He's unmuted. He's unmuted. Back to trial.
Really?
Well, I have nothing prepared to say, so great.
Of course.
Oh, hold on
So
one
how-
moment, please.
I don't think any of us were really prepared, and we were able to come up with a speech. But please take your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the House of Representatives.
In the meantime, I'm abusing my flight attendant. Let's just say she's on the wing.
Oh, also, let's make sure while we have some free time that the president's legal team is also here. Mr. President,
Right.
you can hear who is your legal team. And as always, you can defend yourself, but that would probably be unwise because any criminal that does that, not that you're a criminal, I'm just saying, people that are accused of it and they represent themselves at trial, it doesn't usually end well because usually.
All right, I have the document ready. I was sent by Hillary Sanders, and she would have been a House manager had she received the simple majority of the vote by the House, but that has not happened as of now. So I will be a House manager until if she is elected, or if not, then I'll be a House manager for the rest of the trial.
All right, the House management is recognized for their opening statement.
Nice.
Mr. Williams,
The prosecution does not have an open
I'm
statement.
convinced. That's for sure.
All right.
I'll be the prosecutor if that's what it comes to.
I have 5 words I need to say before this trial starts.
You're gonna start calling me Marsha Fudge.
For the
honey.
people.
Yeah, Marsha Fudge. What's your name?
All right.
The OJ
order.
one.
If we are not able to begin with opening
Marsha
statements,
Clark. That's her name.
due to the negligence of.
I apologize.
All right.
It won't let me speak on mobile. Can you give me 1 second to load this on my PC? It'll be a minute or two. I apologize.
Which is it, a second or a minute?
But you're speaking right
Mr.
now,
President,
though.
have you
2
submitted-
minutes. 2 minutes.
Mr. President, have you submitted your legal defense
But you're
team?
speaking, though. I don't understand.
Well, for this chat, I can only do it push to talk, and I can't talk with the document. So
Yeah.
Okay, one of the administrators give him the full license to speak, please.
I got my driver's license last week.
As always,
Jacob
always
Jacob DM.
Okay.
From
You
his
just-
own honor.
yeah.
Can I propose a motion?
All right.
Can I propose a motion?
Paul. Are you able to speak, or are the president's legal defense team able to deliver their opening statement? Though I'm not sure who they are. We have not been conferred this information.
Can I propose a motion first? Motion.
Ooh, bless you, child. Bless you.
Thank you. I have a motion to propose on the floor. I'd like to. I'm just gonna say it. I motion for motion for witnesses after opening statements, and the motion. And I also would like to call the event star Benjamin Bryant as a witness.
Second.
Without objection.
It is ordered.
It is so ordered, darling.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I motion for a brief recess.
Second.
Alright.
Is there an objection?
5 minutes.
A 3.5 minute recess will be ordered.
20 seconds. You get enough time for a cup of water.
20 seconds.
No one is allowed in the Senate chamber during the recess. I've just taken the gavel.
If you would like during the recess, I can tell stories from
Ooh,
back in the day.
detail.
Okay, so there was this one time, my first.
Currently over the Rio Grande Valley, by the way.
That was my first day in the Senate. At that time, I was Selena Meyer, and we were counting the electors. And
Oh God.
All right.
I'm.
All right.
Oh, come on. We had a recess. To be fair,
Was there a motion that I missed?
there was a motion. There was
Yeah.
no
Secretary of
position.
State, mark the official
The
start
motion
of the
was that we have witnesses after opening statements, and then we called Ben as a witness.
All right. Yeah. Seeing as there are no opening statements apparently.
I'm getting the document ready now.
He's working on Windows.
You have
XP. Give him a
ample
minute.
time to be able to be prepared for this.
Wait, could you
Focus on
repeat what you
Windows
said?
XP. Doesn't even have Windows 7.
No, I'm not.
Say what you will about the former vice president, but when he wanted to commit treason, he committed treason. It was done. Didn't have to wait for it.
Ooh.
That is a joke.
Also, when I was
Is that on the record?
Jacob PM.
No, it's not. We're on recess.
God,
Okay.
could you want? Oh.
Aaron, check PMs.
Gladly. Oh, Tom, I don't want to see that. You don't need to send me a picture. Don't want to see that.
What is happening right now?
I'd just like to say that
Apparently
if the
neither
glove
the
don't
defense
fit, you
team-
must acquit. I call for President Terry to put on a cloth glove, and if it does not not fit him, then we must acquit him.
I
Right.
believe that Mr. Brosnahan planted
I motion to skip
samples
opening
of his
statements.
blood at the crime scene at Bundy.
I motion to skip opening statements.
That
Alright,
is
is
against
there
the Constitution.
I highly doubt that it's against the Constitution.
Well, the opening statements will not be skipped. However, they may be postponed in order for both
I
sides
motion to reverse
to.
opening statements till the end of the trial, then.
Okay.
The motion. Instead, I think am I right in saying that there was no objection to Senator Cawthorn, I believe, or one of the senators' motion to proceed with witnesses?
There was no
That was
opposition.
mine. That was mine. And there was no objection.
All right.
Uh,
Seeing as it seems that both sides have yielded their opening statements because of their lack.
I have the document right now.
I'm sorry.
It's too late. We've waited like 20 minutes, and
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You'll have to wait. Okay. We'll move forward with questioning of the first witness.
can I be
I
called?
don't believe that
Ben.
either the defense team, which seems to be non-existent, or the prosecution house manager seem to be in any state to question the witness. So I believe senators may take opportunities to question the witness regarding regarding their knowledge of the situation. And so, first of all,
Point of order.
The first witness. Point of order. The president pro tempore.
How do I need to take the oath?
That's happening. Yeah, I'm just.
He's
kidding.
above the law. My point of order is that we, in order to have, we must play the following music before a testimony.
I thought I was gonna be the awesome Asian star.
All right.
Gotta get
Mr.
that out of the way.
Justice Bryant.
Judge Lynn
are
Fowler.
you ready to take your oath?
That's Tom right now.
I am.
Okay.
Judge Lynn Toller.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the whole truth?
I'm on a wheelchair.
Okay, people.
Order. If senators themselves are not able to behave in trial, they will forfeit their opportunity to ask the questions. All right. Your oath, Mr. Bryant. Sorry, 1 second. Where is this gone? Here. Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the whole truth, that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. We'll begin with the first round of questioning from senators. Senators may now petition to be recognized.
Bimbo leaving the 94A.
Does any senator wish to question the witness?
Mr. President,
The president pro tempore is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Mr. Bryant, start off with a very simple question. How are you? Doing well?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am just dandy. Good few days, despite the, Ukraine thing. You are the chief event czar, correct?
That's correct.
Do you, in your ability as an administrator, do you go completely at the events alone, or do you have a group of administrators that you consult with? At the end of the day, who gets the final say on?
Sometimes
ahead.
sometimes I consult with other people. Sometimes I'll run events by Tom or DSG or when he served as owner, Everett, but ultimately the final say is mine.
Okay. When you create an event, as frankly, this is more of a compliment. It might not sound like a compliment. They are complicated because that's how politics actually is. We want it to be realistic. Do you come in with the China-Taiwan event or the Ukraine event or any of the financial, economic events, do you come in with an idea of this is the best case scenario of how the president and the Congress need to come to it, and this is the worst case scenario, and this is what I expect. Is there some sort of idea there? Not necessarily anything written, but just an idea of what the course is.
Sorry, yeah. To an extent, but ultimately, anything that happens in the event reflects, in my own opinion, and just based off historical precedent, how well either the president or the administration or whoever has handled the event, or the opposite in some matters. So it's reflective of the decisions that the people in charge make.
At what point were you made aware that the vice president was, and I think we are all comfortable here to not use terms that are hypothetical, since it's now essentially confirmed that the vice president did go and do some very illegal acts that would have been more than necessary of impeachment and removal. At what point were you made aware of the president's actions and the Secretary of Defense?
You'll have to be more specific about what actions you're referring to, because there's several. But...
good point. Most specifically, the one I had in mind was the writing of the memo that I think it was 150,000 troops that were sent without permission or acknowledged or an alert to Congress. At what point were you made aware that the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense had authored that?
I believe the president brought that up to me. I'm not sure the exact date. I can look back and find it. But it was shortly thereafter the letter was drawn up. He had brought concerns forward to me, just in my capacity as events sir. Obviously, I was not in any position to make any action on that, or nor to report it. Obviously, as events sir, I have to stay impartial and not get into the weeds on that. But I wasn't aware that that he was being blackmailed. In my interpretation of it, so I knew that there was at least some talk of the 25th being invoked, but to my understanding, it was only to be a short-term solution to solving a problem they believe to be limited in scope with regards to the Ukraine situation.
My next question is not really more so your opinion, and I understand if you can't really go too far into the weeds on this. But based on what you've seen and your interactions with key members of the administration, do you have any reason to believe that the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense were throwing the event to sabotage the administration for political gain?
That they were purposely
botching the event.
I have no reason to believe that, no.
Okay. Would you more so aim the, quite frankly, lackluster, putting it very nicely, response to the event on just negligence, incompetence? What factor do you think played the biggest role in that?
Well, it's not for me to decide
Of course.
what constitutes negligence or incompetence, but I will say I don't think it's any secret that I don't think anyone worth their salt would deny the fact that this event was very poorly handled. Whoever you want to lay that at their feet, that's up to each person's individual opinion, but ultimately I think that the administration from the outset, there were several components of the response that were not as much concerning to me as someone who was impartial, but intriguing to me, just based on what I viewed to be I don't want to say incompetent, but a generally lackluster response is the way I would put it.
Before I get to the next question, if someone has the select committee report on hand, you could send that in the chat. I'd like to reference that as I continue my questioning of the witness. Okay, thank you, Justice Williams. So you might want to open this because I will reference certain points on that. So the president testified that he was coerced into deploying troops into Ukraine without informing Congress by the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense, along with other members of the National Security Council. That's on page 3. Based on the information you've seen, do you believe that to be a fair analysis? That he was coerced?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. In the president's testimony, he claimed that he was coerced into deploying troops into Ukraine without informing Congress by the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense and other members of the NSC. Do you, based on what you've seen, how would you rate that analysis by the president?
That's not up to me to decide whether he was coerced.
Based on
only members of
in the PMs and your communications between the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense, did you have reason to think that there's at least some truth there? I know you can't quite.
I don't know if, well, coercion would imply success. Whether he was successfully coerced, that's up for everybody else to interpret. But I think that there was at least an attempt to convince him. Whether I would use the term coerce, I mean, that has legal definition. So I would probably, as far as coerce, I would imply that there was a coordinated undertaking to more or less blackmail him. Whether I don't have any reason to believe that that's true. That said, I can't tell you how the president felt. I wasn't in all of the calls or chat the president and vice president, but based on what I've seen, I have no reason to believe that he was being blackmailed, and so I don't have any reason to believe that he was being coerced. In the sense that I believe that you're asking the question.
Yeah. Are you part of the National Security Council chat as an administrative official?
I am.
Okay. Were you aware of, and this is on page 5 of the report, that the Vice President authorized sending troops to Kiev, the Secretary of State authorized stationing nukes in the Odessa region, and Secretary Walker said, quote, "Are we going to bypass Congress on this?" End quote. Upon reading this, I would assume you were alarmed by that. Was it clear to you that there was something bigger going on here, and that something was going to happen as a result, that the consequences were going to be had if, and at what point do you have to step forward and say, okay, this is illegal behavior due to these pieces of legislation that have been passed? I just wanted to see where your head was at the time when you read those messages in the NSC chat.
I mean, from my own perspective, I was deeply alarmed when I read all of that, but just so everybody understands, there is no point at which events secretary or events that I can step forward and blow the whistle. I'm there to ensure impartiality, even if the law is being broken. If I am there in my capacity as a judge, that's a different story. I can raise raise concerns, because I'm there to enforce the law. But if I'm there as an events administrator, I'm there to enforce impartiality. And for me to intervene and say that this person is breaking the law or that person is doing something improper, even if I believe it to be true, that would be an overstep on my part, and that's something that I can't do in my capacity. And so there was no point at which I considered raising any of this to anyone. That said, myself personally, I was deeply concerned when I read the messages, particularly the messages basically implying that the Secretary of not implying that the Secretary of Defense wanted to move forward without congressional approval. He basically just said that blankly, and that the Secretary of State wanted to position nuclear weapons in Ukraine, which was at the time on the verge of collapsing. The Vice President, when he said we need to send troops to Kiev, in my own interpretation of that, I didn't read that as much as him ordering it. I was more so seeing that as his own opinion on the matter. But whether that's an order or not, that's up for other people to view. But in my own interpretation at the time, I thought that was advice to the Secretary of Defense and advice to the President.
If I could briefly, didn't do this earlier, but we probably should do it now, just before you continue your questioning of the witness. If all senators, briefly, could raise their right hand and repeat after me, just so I can swear them in as jurors. So just say I do at the end. If you're not able to speak, you may converse your agreement to the oath in the Senate floor chat. Right. Do you solemnly swear that in all things pertaining to the trial of the impeachment of Everett Terry, President of the United States, now pending, you will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and laws, so help you God?
I do.
I do, Mr. Chief Justice.
I mean, I guess.
Senators are required to.
Mr. President, I don't think that was a sufficient answer from Senator Goldwater.
I do.
If you want to get mad, just say that. Fine. I do. I guess.
Senator Bennett.
So your profile picture is a frog, so I don't want to hear it.
Jacob. I said.
Your profile picture is a frog.
Okay. Is there any
Senator Bennett is a pedophile.
Oh my God.
I am.
Senator Jones.
This is live.
That I am.
I do.
Okay.
All right.
I believe everyone that's able to speak has spoken. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Not to attempt to remove you of your time, but just to remind you that other senators may wish to question the witness.
I was just about to wrap it up. I have my last question.
Right, go ahead, continue.
Okay. The president claims that his signature was forged on let me get his exact wording, that they attempted to forge his name on documents. Did you see, from your position as an administrative official, either in the NSC chat or some other capacity that you were present, that effort happened?
I saw several times, and this was something that was also concerning to me, that there was memos and as a former president, when you write up a memo, oftentimes you'll have your Secretary of State, your Secretary of Defense, whomever, write up those memos. You add your signatures to it. That was fine, but I did find it deeply alarming that Secretary Walker was sending memos with the president's signature already attached. That's not just hot for his signature and the president's signature. That's alarming. But I also want to point out the fact, and just for full transparency, the president did not have any problem with that when that was happening, to the breadth of my knowledge. in a C chat. I remember one instance that the secretary brought forward. He brought forward a memo and said that he already added to the memo that that the president had signed, and so he had made additions to it, and that the signature was already on it, and that the president didn't seem to have a problem with that at the time. Whether there was other instances, I don't know. There could have been other more serious instances, but I was not aware of them. I was aware of a select few instances, and the on certain memos. I think that there was probably 3 or 4 that the Secretary of Defense made, and to my knowledge, he put the president's signature on those, and that was concerning to me as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant, Justice Bryant. If I could, and I don't know if it's the appropriate time to do so, I would like to call President Terry as a witness.
May I mean, are we moving on from Ben?
Yeah, if I could real quick. Order. I'm sure that request can be obliged, but I would first like to give other senators the opportunity to question our first witness.
Well, could I just wait?
Other
Because
senators-
can I have a question about the process? Because I'm okay if Aaron wants to do it a little differently, but I just like, are we gonna do like one witness at a time? Are we gonna do one witness at a time, or the people who are here can be called up by one senator at a time?
Well, the way it has been working is we were doing one witness at a time, but if senators want to amend this, they may. But I have been advised by the first witness, Mr. Bryant, that he does have to leave soon. So I think it'd be good if we got all his questioning out of the way first. So, does any other senator wish to question the first witness? Please say so now.
Aye.
All right, Senator Bennett is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
How are you, Mr. Bryant?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm extraordinarily well. I only have one question, and that question is: do you think that within all these chats, anything? I mean, you may not be able to comment on this, but that the conduct the president participated in is considered impeachable?
Due to the nature of this event, I'm not going to comment on that. What I will say is, I think that the response from the administration on this issue was very flawed. But it would be improper for me to comment on whether something is impeachable or not. If you want to refer to a specific example, I might be able to go more in depth, but I don't want to speculate.
You will permit me one more question. To your acknowledgement, has the president participated in any of these activities with the intent of bypassing Congress?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't want to talk about intent just because I can't know what his intent was, but I do know as a matter of fact that the Secretary of Defense made it explicitly clear that that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to move past Congress. The president acknowledged, to the best of my recollection afterwards, that he didn't want to do anything illegal, so he understood that moving forward a congressional action was illegal under his own interpretation. And then whether that merits impeachment or not is up to other people. as far as the president, under his own definition, I think that the president understands fully that he did something that was probably not good, and he's admitted that in the past. Whether something is illegal or not, I don't know. That's not up to me. But in my capacity as events there, anyways.
In the chat, did the president explicitly state anything that you found concerning?
Let me just check. Yes, he did.
Will you please state that to the...
I asked him on the 10th, which was 3 days ago. Well, 4 days ago for me, but 3 days ago for the rest of you Americans. And I asked him, it was made clear that Russia was likely to take over Kiev, and that it was probably going to fall in the next 24 hours. And I asked him if he wanted to withdraw troops from or workers from the embassy, and he said no, that they will remain in Kiev as long as it's, in his words, in Ukrainian hands. And I let him know that the situation was very fluid and it wouldn't take much time for the Russians to take Kiev. And I found it concerning that point was more or less ignored, and that was what was concerning to me.
If you will allow me to interrupt, that seems more like a concerning from foreign policy approach, like concerning the high crimes and misdemeanors that we're discussing today. Anything concerning around that is what I'm referring to.
Well, that's what I was answering.
All right. Well, it seems as if that was a foreign policy concern. However,
I mean, I'm not going to get into the business of what is impeachable and what is not. So but as far as what was concerning to me, that was one of the things the president did that was concerning to me. There were several things that were done throughout this response that were concerning to me. If I was going to go through the list of them, I'd be here a while.
Right.
Do you have any further questions?
I do not.
All right.
Mr. President?
Senator Goldwater request.
Sorry. Excuse me.
We will head over to the senior senator from Shoshone, Senator Goldwater. Recognized for as much time as you may consume.
Thank you, darling. Mr. Czar, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
You know, I'd like to say I'm good, but currently I'm suffering from stage 3 ovarian cancer.
Okay,
Anyways, I'm pursuing chemotherapy in Mexico because Mexican chemotherapy is better than American.
The senator will keep his
I'm moving on with my questioning. Excuse you. I'm moving on.
That is true, though.
Well, you would know.
You would know, yeah.
I would know, but okay.
Si puede, senor. Okay. Mr. Czar. You like that name? You like Czar? Okay. My first question, Mr. Czar, is: were you in the Situation Room whenever President Terry decided to initially send in troops?
I wasn't. I don't know what you mean by the Situation Room. There's no chat named the Situation Room or anything like that. But he was the one. I was the first one. I assume, excluding his administration, that was notified of the fact that he was.
The president ever asked your opinion on whether or not it would be a good idea to send in troops?
Let me check. I wouldn't have told him. I can't remember if he
But did he ask?
Let me check. I don't believe so.
Okay.
But let me just check just to be sure.
Okay. The chemotherapy gives you a cough.
No, he never did. He never
No,
asked.
he didn't. Okay. Whenever he informed you of the initial decision, were you alarmed by the decision?
No, I wasn't alarmed by the decision to send in troops. No.
Is there a specific reason why you weren't alarmed?
because I've served as president and I know that it's a difficult decision to send in troops. I've deployed more troops than anybody else in the history of DES. But
That is something to brag about.
decisions have to be made. I'm not
No,
saying
it was your
any brag-
VP.
Oh, okay.
You're
I'm
dumb.
not,
I'm not gonna
okay,
say
shut
the
up.
word.
Shut up, Jacob. I'm not saying
Drinking
it
PMs.
I'm not saying it in a way to brag. I'm saying it as a matter of fact. So I understand the difficulty of making those decisions. So I wasn't necessarily alarmed by it. I was more so alarmed by what happened afterwards and how the event was handled. The deployment of troops was not what was alarming to me. How the situation was handled after the deployment of troops, and really before the deployment of troops, was concerning to me.
And also, like the first day, it was very offensive that you forgot I was your VP, even though I was your VP for one season and 1 4. Anyways.
Well, it wasn't a 4, it was like 2 days, and then then you went through this, but anyways.
Well, then I went to a spa, so. And.
Okay, so.
Okay. I went to a spa. Mozambique. Okay, another question I have for you is that did the president ever, as far as your knowledge can extend, consult officials or advisors about the legality of his actions?
I mean, I would say, I don't know whether he consulted them, but he clearly understood that deploying troops without congressional authority, that bypassing Congress, as the Secretary of Defense put it, was illegal because he was the one that said it was illegal. So.
Did the president ever ask you if he had to propose something in Congress?
I think he clearly understood that he needed to propose something in Congress just based on the fact that the Secretary of Defense said, "Do you want to?"
We
wanted to bypass. He said, "Are we going to bypass Congress on this?"
What the fuck?
And then
He said
basically
what?
said, "I don't want to do anything illegal." So he clearly.
The president said that, or the Secretary of Defense?
The president said that.
So
That is
the
so
Secretary of Defense
contradictory.
was pivotal in coercing the president into committing an illegal act and obstructing.
I don't want to comment on that. That's not for you.
That's essentially what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying whether he was coercing anyone. I'm saying he asked the question also, are we going to bypass Congress on this? And then the president said, I don't want to do anything illegal or overstep
The Secretary
Congress.
of Defense pursued it.
Well, that's up to everyone else's interpretation on who pursued it. But I'm saying the president, your question was, did the president know that acting without congressional authority was illegal? And just based on what I've seen, the answer is yes.
Point of order.
Point of order, the president pro tempore.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to let everyone know that the president has to leave very soon. So if we can wrap up the.
I have like
questioning.
2 questions for Brian.
I'll take as long as I want, darling. I'll do whatever I want.
I'm just letting you know that I'd like to get as much as we can. That we are.
Alright,
limited.
if Senator
I yield
Goldwater
back.
could be expeditious in the remainder of his questions, it would be greatly appreciated.
Next question.
I can yield to allow.
No, I have one more question, and then you can yield. Do you think that the president, in your interactions with him, was at all aware that he was breaking the law?
In what capacity? Breaking the law, doing what?
Passing Congress, obstructing justice in Congress.
It depends on whether you think, in my own opinion, it depends on whether you think that targeted military intervention needs congressional approval.
Well, according to the War Powers Authorization Act, doesn't it?
It depends on whether direct in a short term.
Well, I would consider
scope
50,000
military.
troops dying quite direct. Wouldn't you?
We're not talking about what I think. I'm just saying it's a matter of opinion. So I don't want to speculate, but I would say that it depends on what your opinion is of a short or a small scope operation is. I would say that 150,000 troops is on the larger side of things.
Have you completed your questioning, Senator Goldwater?
1 second.
Oh my god.
Quiet, Frog. Listen.
Kermit.
Yeah, you're actually the princess and the frog. Okay. Anyways, I'm done with my questioning.
That's
with,
right.
The czar.
All right.
And Ben, I'll see you in.
Just briefly, because the president and the our first witness, Mr. Bryant, both have to leave soon, I'll open it up to simultaneous questioning of both individuals so that we can get through this as quick as possible. So I'll quickly put the president under his oath, and then we'll head to Senator Sanders. Mr. President? Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Senator Sanders is recognized for as much time as he may consume to question both the president and Justice Bryant.
So, Mr. Czar, how many times were you asked tonight, how are you?
How many witnesses have there been?
Mr. President. Sorry, you're not the president. You're not the president anymore.
Unfortunately.
Right, unfortunately. Well, we know this. We know this probably wouldn't have happened if you're the president. That's one thing I can credit you with.
No, it would have.
No, I don't think so. But anyway, Ben.
You would have succeeded though.
Ben. That was a good joke. Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought now. Sorry, Ben. Did the president, to your knowledge, inform the Speaker of the House of the action he was going to take prior in the given time frame as established in the War Powers Act?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Bitch, I've been talking for 2 minutes, Aaron. I know. Christ. Was the President pro tempore... I'm going to just start talking slower now. Was the President pro tempore informed by the President in the time frame given by the War Powers Act?
That's a question for the PT, but to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, sorry, I meant to your knowledge. To your knowledge, did the President plan on informing members of both of those congressional leaders?
I can't tell you what his plans were, but to the best of my knowledge, no, he didn't.
To the best of your knowledge, did the president say anything about, given the chats that you were in, did the president say anything about complying with the second part of the War Powers Resolution, which he has been accused of breaking, which is having Congress pass either an authorization of the use of military force or the declaration of war?
The president explicitly and publicly has said that he did not want, that this was not a war. But as far as...
Right, which is sort of the authorization of the use of military force, like why both of those are in it. Did he express interest in either of those?
No, not that I saw, no.
So, well, thank you for that. I think that's that's pretty damning testimony right there. And I look forward to hearing testimony from the President pro tempore and the Speaker of the House tomorrow. The testimony I've read from them, I think, is pretty damning as well. Mr. Czar, so I just want to elaborate on what I think is not essentially not quite relevant to this specific trial, but I think would be relevant to a trial which I hope happens just for the sanctity of our government, because this was very disturbing to me. Do you believe, again, to the best of your knowledge, did Vice President Romney or Secretary Mike Walker explicitly state anything that could be deemed conspiracy against the President of the United States?
Because it depends on what you define as conspiracy.
The conspiracy, a conspiracy to, specifically a conspiracy to subvert the power of the president, with Romney assuming some of that power that had been subverted.
Well, clearly there was at least somewhat of a move to at least usurp some of the authority of the president.
Right, and so my question is, right, that's totally true. So my question is, was that, to the best of your knowledge, and I understand that it's not your place to, you can't, no one here can really say what the intent is of a person, and it's not really pertinent to do so, but it is in this case, I think, just for speculation's sake on your part, since you were there. What is your speculation on whether or not there was a conspiracy, or that was a conspiracy, or whether it was a ill-advised but well-intended move?
I mean, I think that the president, I don't want to talk about intent too much, because I don't think it's really relevant. But that said, I will say, just knowing Everett, I will say I think that everything he did was well-intentioned. That said, I don't think that that's what we're discussing here. I don't think that that's relevant. It's about whether wrongdoing occurred, and whether potentially impeachable offenses were committed. As far as a conspiracy on behalf of the Vice President and Secretary of Defense, under my definition of a conspiracy, I don't think that there was a conspiracy specifically against the President by the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense. And I think that claims of that are being overblown. But I think that there was a coordinated attempt to usurp, at least temporarily, some of his power. I don't think that there was any attempt.
But would you say, and sorry, I'm just going to stop you right there for a second, but would you say that was, that attempt to subvert that power, again, extremely ill-advised and illegal, borderline treasonous, and clearly displays sycophantic behavior on the part of some in that event. But would you say that I mean, I would agree with you that I think that the term conspiracy goes a bit too far, would you say that you agree that it's more likely that Vice President Romney, while true being those things which I had just laid out, did this more because he too thought this was truly the best thing for some sort of quick response from the United States government in this response, or in this event?
Yeah, I don't think that anybody in this situation was doing anything with bad intentions in mind. I think everybody thought that what they were doing was right.
Thank you. All right, and then just again, did the president at all inform Congress or congressional leadership, namely the President pro tempore and the Speaker of the House, of military action 12 hours prior to that action being taken?
I don't know. to my knowledge, he didn't. I wouldn't know. I don't know that much about personal contacts between the president. All I have at least somewhat knowledge of is his discussions around firing the Secretary of Defense, his discussions around the invoking of the 25th
Well, right.
Amendment.
I was just about to get to that real quickly. I was just looking for a real quick yes or no answer on that. But thank you for bringing me to my next point, which was partly about something that you brought up in there. So you stated that the president made a statement in one of these chats. I believe you said the Situation Room, but I could be mistaken on that. That he clearly, or made a statement that showed that he clearly knew that, or maybe not knew about the War Powers Act specifically, but knew of the essence of the provisions within. Would you say that had to do, or that knowledge of the illegality of that behavior had to do with the firing of Mr. Walker, or can you elaborate on the firing of Mr. Walker and information around that firing, why it occurred, what the president's motives were behind that, or what you were privy to in statements on that, which may illuminate members of the Senate to the president's motives on that?
I think that as far as whether I'm just going to scroll back through my my reference here to make sure before I say anything. I don't know if I don't know what specifically the sole intent was. I don't think that there was a sole intention for why the.
But is there any message? I'm not really looking for an intent here, but was there any, like, what I could ask it more bare bones. Why was the Secretary of Defense fired? Is there any message that you were privy to, that the president, that the vice president, or someone who may have advised the president gave on that decision?
I don't know. I'd have to look back to find a specific message,
but not to your recollection.
I know that the Secretary of Defense was fired because, to the best of my knowledge, and I believe that this is correct, based on the interactions I've had with the president, due to a dissatisfaction with his performance, or not with a dissatisfaction based on his work ethic or performance, but rather the fact that he believed that the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President were teaming up in a conspiracy to remove him temporarily or perhaps permanently from office.
Did the president, to the best of your knowledge, just a quick yes or no on this one, because I do want to move on to the president. Did the president, to the best of your knowledge, at all plan to do the same to Vice President Romney?
Fire him?
Or taking some action against Vice President Romney for doing what he did?
I'm not sure if he clearly was not going to fire him, because that's not constitutionally allowed. That former Vice President Romney was an elected official.
Well, right. That's why I mean some accountability.
As far as taking action, it would be my assumption, and based on the interactions that I had with the president, that he was prepared to take the vice president out of the loop in those discussions. That would be my assumption in regards to the situation. I mean, if you were expecting somebody to stab you in the back, I don't think that you would really be inviting them into your living room.
I think former President Trump gives a good story about the snake or something like that. He says it a lot, or something about the snake.
I
And
don't listen to anything that man
so,
says anymore. But anyways,
well, I do because he holds a lot of power and it's quite scary. But
Hitler. But anyways,
and people should have paid attention to him in Germany. Maybe they would have stopped
we're
his
getting off
rise.
topic, for God's sakes.
But thank you, Mr. Bryant. With that, I think you can yield. I mean, I think everyone's questions you, but that's up to the Chief Justice. Mr. President.
Just any last questions to the Justice Bryant, because I believe he's going to go to bed. Any final questions, briefly?
I'm
Alright,
not going to go to
seeing
bed
none.
right now, but anyways, it's fine.
All right. Okay. Sorry. Continue, Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Chief Justice. No worries. Mr. President, are you there? Okay, cool. Mr. President, ice for sure. Were you aware of the War Powers Act of 1973 in this event? Prior to this event?
Minusculely or very vaguely. I don't know the specifics of the bill.
So vaguely, as in you knew of the title of the legislation, or knew of vaguely as how?
I knew of its existence. I just didn't know what to ascertain to specifically.
So you knew of a bill called the War Powers Act.
Yes, and that's about as far as it goes.
And that's about as far as it goes. Okay. So in making this decision on war power, did you at all consider looking up taking the time to look up the War Powers Act of 1973?
No, because at the time I had trusted the people in my cabinet, believed that they could come to the right decision, but that eventually was not. I didn't, couldn't hold on to that any longer. But when I realized that they had my name on documents, I'll go into that further, and then they tried to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Right, and I'm very sorry to hear all of that. And as a member of the United States Senate and the Ethics Committee, I can assure you that after we get these proceedings done based on the charges brought up against you, even though both of them have left the community, I think it's quite important that for the sanctity of government, we continue to prosecute that. But I want to stay on the issue here. You said that you entrusted your cabinet to do this. Does that mean that you entrusted your cabinet to follow through on the War Powers Act, sort of in a loose manner? Not specific. Obviously, you weren't thinking to yourself, "Oh, well, I want the cabinet to." But I mean, sort of in a loose manner. You were hold on. You were sort of giving broad trust. What I'm trying to get here, you were giving broad trust to the cabinet, which included handling the War Powers Act, handling the content of the War Powers. No?
As you know, as I just said, I had almost no knowing of the contents of the War Powers Act. So there was no way I even permitted them to handle it if I didn't know the context.
So when Avenzar Bryant testifies to the fact that you said you don't want to bypass Congress on this, I believe that was his exact quote, if I'm not mistaken. That to me shows that you may not have understood the War Powers Act, but understood the essence of the act. Is that true?
No, I did not. All I knew is bypassing Congress was illegal. From there.
Oh, so so Mr. President, you did know that bypassing Congress was illegal.
Yes, but that isn't directly within the War Powers Act.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, the War Powers Act quite clearly. Hold on, Mr. President. The War Powers Act quite clearly states that both the President pro tempore and the Speaker of the House must be informed 12 hours prior. Did you do that?
No, I did not.
It also states quite clearly that if either in the event that that does not happen, or in the event that Congress is not informed, that the administration has 60 days, which translates to 2 days here, to tell Congress to either pass an AUMF or a DOW. Did you do either of those things?
I would have done it.
Okay. But Mr. President, I'll ask you a hypothetical question. If somebody who's an 18-year-old, grown up by wolves, I'm turning into Senator Kennedy here, grown up by wolves, lived on a farm his whole life, never even heard of a law, goes out, kills someone, gets caught by the police, and then says, I didn't know it was wrong to kill people. Do we not prosecute that person?
Certainly the extent of which the prosecution goes would be called into question. But
Well, right, it would be called manslaughter. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, it wouldn't.
there's a manslaughter, isn't there?
It would be manslaughter or first-degree murder. I mean, I might have to research my criminal law again, but I think I'm right on that. Either way, we would prosecute it. And in a similar event, while I 100% believe that you were unaware of the War Powers Act, do you believe, do you understand how I can see the violation here?
As me not knowing, I could see that. I could see it now.
Well, right. I mean, just do you understand how you not knowing it is irrelevant to you following the
But that's not the only thing. As I said, or at least alluded to in my testimony, is the reason I approved things so quickly is because I had the fear that in this tumultuous time that they would invoke the 25th, that they take full power potentially, as they expressed interest previously in nuking Russia.
So are you saying that you were blackmailed into not informing Congress?
Blackmail meaning that they have something I previously did to do, which is not the case.
Or coerced? You were pressured into not informing Congress. Is that what you're telling me and the committee here?
I was more so pressured into signing things quickly, or
Right. I 100% believe and agree with you, and am disturbed by the fact that you were coerced and pressured into taking this action. But my question is, and I, like I said, I can't speak for the whole Senate, but I know that the President pro tempore agrees with me here. That needs to be prosecuted. Those are not the charges we're here to prosecute. To get to the issue again, what we're here to prosecute is the War Powers Act. Were you coerced or pressured into not informing Congress of the action which you may or may not have been, probably was, pressured into taking?
I was coerced into it. Well, first off, I didn't, as I said previously, know of the War Powers Act, so there'd be no way.
Well, President Terry, I understand you didn't know about it, but in retrospect, I
was answering the question. Now, if you will allow me to answer the question, I understand what you're just trying to get your point across. I understand that, but if I can please answer the question before you jump into it. Thank you. Now, like I said, I didn't know of the assertions or whatnot to the War Powers Act, and I feel that, and I actually know that I was being forced to act, which resulted in the violation of the act, which I now know at the time I didn't. If that makes any sense.
It does, President Terry, but frankly, I cannot get past the fact that you clearly stated that you did not want to bypass Congress. Therefore,
No, I will tell you why I did that.
Hold on. You did not want to bypass Congress on this. I'm sure you have an explanation for that. And you testify. I mean, we have it on. It's live. It's live here on CBS, so it's never gonna get lost. And you said the exact sentence, or whatever it was. Not the exact sentence. I'm paraphrasing here, but you said something along the lines of, "I knew it was illegal." I mean, I understand you were pressured into this. Nate resigned as a result. You fired Mike as a result. They will be retroactively impeached, as President Trump was, and shouldn't have been. I'm kidding. And necessary action will be taken on them. If it was real life, they would have been prosecuted by a court. But you, Mr. President, I don't believe should be prosecuted by a court. I don't believe you should be in jail, like I believe those two people should be in jail. But I do believe you derelicted your duty as president, knowingly or unknowingly. And frankly, Mr. President, testimony to not knowing that, do you really believe, and this is a question, not rhetorical, do you really believe that not knowing that a law exists exempts you from accountability on that law? Yes or no?
Well, that takes some explanation, in my opinion.
Well, I believe it can be a yes or no followed by explanation, and I think that's the answer I'm looking for.
I can't give a yes or no on that. I'd say that it depends on the circumstance mostly.
For your circumstance, I guess, would you say that not knowing about a law, and we're talking about civil law here. I mean, again, I don't believe you should be going to jail. We're talking about high crime.
Coercion and so forth, yes.
Excuse, I actually legitimately missed that. Sorry. What did you say there?
What do you mean?
I did not hear what you said.
Okay, repeat your question. It would be better to start it from there.
All right. Mr. President, do you believe that whether or not, knowing or unknowingly, a civil officer should be held to account based on the laws that establish the office of civil officers, namely your office, specific to this situation?
Okay, so the question is, do I believe that in my situation, that
it's essentially, do you think it matters that, do you think you shouldn't be held to account because you didn't know about the War Powers Act?
Considering the coercion, yes.
Mr. President, I don't get how you don't see that's disturbing. We all, not a single person here would testify to the fact, sorry, I want to read what Ben said. But
Also, just briefly, not trying to impede on your time, of course, but other senators have messaged me asking to speak. So just
I'll finish up soon.
Yeah.
I'll finish up soon. I'm almost done. I'm almost done with the presentary. But I mean, I don't really understand what context that brings. But no one would testify to the fact that you were not coerced. Everyone agrees that you were coerced into this military action. But President Terry, you are your own person. You, even though this military action could have happened, could have informed Congress. And the fact that you didn't know about the specific War Powers Act is irrelevant to the fact that you did not inform the legislative branch about military action, namely military action involving 150,000 soldiers. It's irrelevant, excuse me, because President Terry, and you not knowing about that law or knowing about that law is irrelevant because the following, and I'll finish up after this, and I might include a question in here, but it might not be. It's irrelevant because the War Powers Act is there as essentially a buffer for the co-equal branch of government. It doesn't matter if the stupidest person on earth gets, I mean, really, if the stupidest person on earth gets elected president of the United States. Because if that person takes military action without Congress, the War Powers Act is there for Congress to then hold that person to account. Whether or not the Russian government made President Terry go to war with Ukraine or not does not matter. Or the vice president. I'm just saying it doesn't matter who coursed who. What matters is the co-equal branch of government, or the co-equal government that we have was completely violated. And frankly, to get into a display of personal belief, you went through with the military action. You cognizantly went through with the military action. Under pressure, yes, but you were the one who authorized the action. Therefore, you authorized that action knowing that you weren't going to inform Congress. Not knowing that there was a War Powers Act, but knowing that you weren't going to inform Congress. That itself is the high crime and misdemeanor. That itself is why we are here. It does not matter that you did not know about the War Powers Act. What matters is the sacred principle within the War Powers Act, the essence of it, keeping a president from ultimate power and complete control of the military. Keeping control of the military between both the president and the legislative branch. That's the essence that was broken here. Whether you knew about that essence or not is irrelevant. We, as a body, have an obligation to uphold that essence. With that, Mr. President, I yield to any other senator who wishes to question the president.
Mr. President, Mr.
Alright, I believe the President pro tempore had some questions, and just so we're taking forever, I'm just going to put some time limits on going forward, but not anything restrictive really. The President pro tempore is recognized for 10 minutes of questioning of the witness.
Thank you. If I could, I have one question that I was going to ask to Mr. Czar Bryant. There's just one question.
If he's available, that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
Okay. How long did the president wait to respond to the intelligence that Russia was about to invade Ukraine?
Let me scroll up and check. I notified them it was the 6th of October that there was activity on the Russian-Ukrainian border, that the Russians were doing increased military exercises. The vice president responded. Later in that same day, I said that NATO intel shows that the Russians are likely to attack and push past the border in Ukraine. The vice president tagged the president, and the president acknowledged it. He said thank you. The event started to take form. I'm just gonna look back at the event releases just to make sure. Yeah, first there was an event that So that happened on the 6th. On the 7th, Russia invaded the Ukraine. They pushed deep into Ukrainian territory. On the 8th and 9th, there was no update. On the 10th, Russia made large gains. There was, that is when the Russians were starting to make large gains. That is when the president was tipped off to the fact that Russia was going to take over Kiev, and then the rest of Russia, or the rest of Ukraine, if there was no troops to counter the Russian invasion, that it would fall within 24 hours without U.S. troops. The Secretary of Defense said that they should position nukes instead of a no-fly zone in western Ukraine. The Vice President said that they should send troops to Kiev. And then I asked the President if he was withdrawing workers from the embassy in Kiev, just to give context to the event. He said no, that they would remain. Then I told him I'm just finishing. Sorry. I told him that the situation was very fluid, and that he needed to let me know, and so he said no. And then the event continued to unfold. So he was told on the 6th he did not take action on the issue until the 10th.
So how many days, just to summarize?
4.
4 days. And he knew of the intelligence, and there was no response for 4 days.
Yes.
So now that we have that cleared up, I want to start. I have a few questions for the president. Some of which
sorry.
I wrote down
Part
very
of
hastily.
can I just hold on? Sorry, I have a question for you, Aaron. Actually, can you just repeat what you just said? Can you?
Just briefly, I might be out of commission for just a bit. Ben is just gonna briefly preside in my place.
Aaron, what did you just say? Did you say that there was? Can you repeat the thing about the response, please?
My question was asking the event czar how long the president knew about the upcoming event, and when him and his administration began responding, which he said was 4 days.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I'm gonna try to be quick because I know the president would like to go to sleep. He has school tomorrow, so I'm gonna try to be quick. My first question is, and I believe I know the answer to this, but I just want it to be on the record. During your time as president, obviously we all know
accurately than I thought. Sorry.
your administration has been mostly focused with foreign policy events. Would that be a fair assessment?
Almost all of it.
Yes. And I know, and I've said this before, that when you were campaigning, I think you wanted to be a domestic policy president, but you have to deal with what you're dealt. That being said, in your now term and a quarter that you've been in office, have you ever notified Congress of prior military action that you have ordered? And I know the answer to this, but I just want it on the record.
What was it again? You kind of can you repeat it?
In prior military action that you have ordered as president, have you notified before the military? Not in this case, but in prior cases.
I do believe, from what I know now, I believe that the Secretary of, or the Vice President, I'm not sure.
I can answer for you because I know you have.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't look. I'm in no position to vouch for you. I just want the truth.
Okay.
And you have come to me, and I've said this in Senate sessions when we were dealing with prior events, that you have come to me to ask for advice and see what I would do if I were in your shoes. And for that's, for me, and I would, I'm not a legal scholar like some, that would warrant letting me know before a military action. Obviously, that didn't happen in this case, and I've testified to that, and you have too, and the speaker has as well. But so obviously, you knew that in the past you had to have an AUMF to.
Well, I left that mostly. Well, I didn't know, specifics, like I said, about the what is it, the War Act?
If there is going to be military force used, as it is in an AUMF is legally required, and you had to have known that or had some awareness of it because we authorized one for military.
As I said earlier, I had awareness of it. I just didn't know the specifics.
Mr. President, just briefly, if you could let the senator finish the question before you answer it.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. The question is just, you have used or you've worked with Congress, was part of the process of passing an AUMF. I believe Senator Sanders and Senator Cawthorn, and there might have been some more people involved in it, they wrote the AUMF for drone strikes in Hamas. So there was an awareness that an AUMF had to happen regarding a certain threshold of military action. If you were sending troops to oversee something peaceful, or the execution of a democratic election in a previously non-democratic country, say Georgia or Venezuela, which that hasn't happened, we hopefully, but that would be different than, say, sending 150,000 troops to Ukraine to defend them, right? Okay.
I mean, because we never sent troops on the ground,
To Ukraine?
No, to Palestine.
Okay. Yeah, that is accurate. It was just drone strikes because I know I and many others in it wanted to make sure we weren't sending boots to the ground.
Which I mean, I think it's fairly known that I'm kind of a pacifist on this stuff.
Yes. I've known from, and I know I'm not testifying right now, but just to add, and you can see this in the screenshots that were submitted on behalf of the Vice President, the then Vice President, former Secretary of Defense, and everyone else that has contributed, that you were committed to making sure we were not getting into another war. So
yes, I know it's been found out that we were not getting into another war.
So when the event czar and Associate Justice testified, I asked him about if he was aware of any other situation that you had accused the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President of attempting to forge your signature on the document we have all seen now, that I believe was addressed to Congress after it already had happened. The memo that authorized the 150,000 troops. The event czar testified that there were at least, to his knowledge, 3 to 4 additional times that your signature was forged. Can you validate that for us? Would you agree with at least 3 to 4? Okay. Could you give an example of those times?
Okay, so I think Senator Cawthorn can attest to this, and so can Representative McMullen in the Russia-Ukraine response chat, which is the congressional chat for the time. I said, well, Nathan said, no, hey, this is what I said, I'll start. I said, I'll be in Little Rock tomorrow for a good amount of the day, and I'll try to respond to anything and everything that occurs. He said, if anything needs to be done, we'll put your signature on it, and I'll post it if you don't within 30 minutes.
That was per the Secretary of Defense?
The Vice President.
Okay, the Vice President. Was there any pushback when he messaged that?
Yes, I did. I said, just literally send it to me. I'll approve it, or rather input my signature on it. And I'll have my watch connected, so I'll be notified when you send the message. And he said, okay, the 30-minute timer will start as soon as it's sent.
Obviously, you're not a mind reader, right?
Right,
And you are human, correct?
correct.
Okay. That's a revelation to some of this server.
Just to say, Senator, you have about 3 minutes left.
I'll wrap it up. Did you? I'm sorry, I just lost. Obviously, from the message that I'm back. The message that was sent by the vice president that said the 30-minute timer is going to start. Blah 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 blah. Did you see that as an attempt to undermine you?
Yes.
Did you see that as further evidence that the vice president may have not shown the respect that was shown publicly for you?
Yes, because as we know in the screenshots in the report, it was quite the contrary, yes.
Precedent, and I have one final question after this. Precedent would show that the last president to be impeached, President House, the sociopath, he was impeached for not authorizing an AUMF. And now this is the second impeachment of a president that we've had. It's the first, I believe it's the first impeachment trial we've had of a president. And it's for essentially the same issue. An AUMF was not passed by Congress, no one was alerted, and it happened anyway. Knowing that, how is this different from the last time we...
Well, as far as I know, this whole situation with threatening and so forth wasn't involved in the House trial because
Did we lose you? I can't hear you.
okay.
This will have to be the final question from Mr. Scott.
Can I just one last one real quick?
All right, just because I like you.
Because you like me. My last question, and very quickly, there was a public perception that there was a respect, friendship, whatever you want to call it, between you and the vice president. This is this question goes twofold. Was that true, from your point of view, that there was a perceived closeness, that you felt that you could trust the vice president with anything? And then, real quick, and then the second part is, at what point did you realize that any trust or closeness that was there had been fractured or broken beyond repair?
Well, as anyone who knows me and people who know me on this call, I look for the best in people. Always try to. I'm an extreme optimist. So I believe that there was something there with the vice president until he sent the message about invoking the 25th. I took that extremely personally because he knew very well that I'd be, against that. And this was just as recently as other incidents where he was also trying to get QJ Lewis to join in the cabinet. So I felt like it could have been a pushback for me not allowing Lewis into the cabinet, as well as he wanted me to unban Bryson Pittman.
I have more questions, but obviously I know you are beyond my time. It is 12:15 in the morning, and I hope that the very little senators that are still here, I think it's just me, Senator Bennett, and Senator Sanders, and Senator Jones, of course, would agree that let's wrap this up for the day, but we will definitely...
I ask for recognition.
Okay. I will recognize you.
Only if you don't take forever.
Just to let you know, more witnessing question will be available tomorrow as the trial progresses, so do not feel a need to get all your questions in tonight.
Also,
senators do work a lot, but they also do need sleep. So I wouldn't want to keep you up like what happens during big reconciliation bills or whatever.
real quick,
That
also,
will never
it
pass.
seems like we're gonna be the defense and impeachment managers, so just be prepared for that because no one can show up. Continue.
Hold on. Do you mean like senators will be the defense and impeachment managers?
No. I'm saying since every word is taken literally to the point, and there's no inferences that by these questioning, the time that we're questioning witnesses, which I assume I will be called at some point, that we are essentially going to be acting as the impeachment managers teams because we're going to be through our questions showing the cases for acquitting and for convicting. That is what I was saying. That was in this.
At this point, it seems it is working out in that way because both the president did not confer his defense team to the Senate, and the prosecution team was not organized. I believe they are now, but it's getting quite late, so the House managers will be able to make their statements starting tomorrow, following the conclusion of questioning from senators. But I believe Senator Jones.
Yeah, apologies to Senator Jones.
Yeah, I only have one.
Senator Jones is recognized for 10 minutes.
Oh no, this would just be one question. President Terry, my one question here to you is this trial, the questions that you have been asked, especially the recent ones, is this trial on the vice president? Yes or no?
Not the specific one.
Yes or no?
Not this one.
So that's a no?
No.
Thank you. All right, y'all have a blessed one.
All right, are there any further questions from any further senators?
I have a few questions for witness.
All right, Senator Bennett is recognized for 10 minutes.
My question is, was there ever an attempt, what did you feel when the vice president and the secretary attempted to undermine you, in your own words? Well, I mean, I kind of felt it personally as like a backstab, and I felt it as a threat to security, especially during this whole Russian situation. Because if I had I was considering removing the Secretary of Defense, but if I had did that, it would look bad from the outside, and it would give the Russians the ability to possibly undermine further United States intelligence, if that makes any sense. Do you think that if the Vice President and Secretary were able, or were not in the situation, let's say you had someone else there, that this outcome would be much different? I don't think that's a relevant question, to be fair. Well, my other question, I don't have much really, but I mean, they've all answered these ramblings, but my question is, in the end, is this trial, do you believe you've been treated fairly? I believe so. By the jurors, which is us as Senate. You said you believe so. So, yes, possibly. I do believe so. Well, there we have it. Whatever the outcome is, it is what it is, I guess. I yield my time.
Alright, it's 12:30 in America time. Just a very brief outline for tomorrow. Senators will be given the opportunity to ask any final questions to President Terry and Zara Bryant, provided they're available. If not, then I'm sure that they'll provide for in a written way, and then provided again they're available, the goal will be to have the president pro tempore, who will have to step back from his
etc., to testify regarding his knowledge, along with the speaker, and then we'll have the remarks from both teams, or one of the teams, or no teams, depending on if they decide to get their act together. And following that, I believe that will be all there is for the trial, unless any senators motion and agree to bring up any further issues, and then we'll move to the vote, which I'm not sure of a timeline, but it could happen by the end of tomorrow. It could also take slightly longer, and then obviously we'll have the result. So it was testy at the start, but I want to thank everyone for the cooperation, and I believe we just need one of the senators to motion for an adjournment.
Mr. President, motion to adjourn without objection.
Without objection.
It is.
Is adopted. The Senate.
That is ridiculous. Because there's only 2 people, so he could literally vote this down. Remove the objection right now, Senator. I'm yelling at you from the floor. This is a Senate floor yelling session. You reject that objection right now.
I finished my words, or at least started them before the senator was able.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we see how it is.
We see how it is. Biased Senate.
Senator's adjourned, yeah, so hi.